Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alumni Triton Talk. I am Amanda Green, and today I am joined by Jim Mecir. Jim is a 1992 graduate of Eckerd. He's a former Major League pitcher spending 10 years in the pros, and he is currently a motivational speaker working with Improv Talk. Hi, Jim. How are you today?
Good, Amanda. How are you? Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Glad you're here. All right, are you ready for the questions?
Sure.
Okay, so for the past 8 years or so, you've been a motivational speaker. So, after your baseball career, what made you start to get into public speaking?
Well, after my career, spent the first 4 or 5 just raising my kids. I want to be part of their lives. And after they got to the point where they were in school and they were pretty busy, I realized, I needed to find another career. And somebody told me, why don't you join Toastmasters? So I joined a Toastmasters group, which works on your public speaking, and people started enjoying my stories, and they told me that I should try to do this as a career. And one of the people that I met there, her name's Ellen Schnur, she was into improv, and she told me that, to improve on my speaking, I need to, do improv because it will definitely help me out. And I'm not a theater person. I don't want anything to do with that. So it took about a year. But when I finally did it, I realized everything that I learned, I could bring back to my own baseball career. And it's not the fact that I would actually go on stage and do improv because that's just not my thing.
Right.
But I saw how important those lessons were because to do improv, you need to be even more of a team than, say, a baseball team, because anytime you're on stage, everybody has to be working in sync or it's going to fail.
Right. I actually took an improv class here at Eckerd as my winter terms, and it taught me so much, and it was one of my kind of favorite classes here. So I know what you're talking about being a team and everything.
Right, it's a lot of engagement too. Instead of I'm speaking, but I'm not just giving an hour speech where everybody's sitting there listening to me. They're part of the experience. They're playing games, and then there's a debrief talking about what they learned, and then I'll tell shorter stories to reinforce lessons.
Right. And so I was researching some of your different speeches. I looked at your speech on when you were playing the Mariners and going against A-Rod. So I see that a lot of your speeches are about adversity, success, and like you said, team. Can you just talk about a little bit of each of your messages?
Yes, they all kind of combine into one, right? So I believe in order to succeed, you need to be resilient, and to be successful, you have to find that team. So what we do in the job that I do, our improv talk, we actually combine all those things. So we put on, mostly 3-hour workshops, but a lot of times it's 1 hour. But to me, part of sports, the biggest thing is not so much the practice and the talent. It's really about controlling your emotions and being resilient and able to overcome adversity, because those are the things you really can't control. And I think a lot of times, a lot of athletes and even academic people forget about that part. They're always working on their mental ability and their physical ability, and they'll forget in the end, a lot of times when we struggle, it's because of that negative voice in our head that's telling me we can't do something.
Right. Well, yeah, it's definitely important to work on the mental side of it. How many, you travel throughout the year, but how many speeches do you say you do a year?
It depends. It's different now because now I'm part of a team and we kind of split up time. But it could be about 30. Depends on the situation. Like, well, in the last months or so, not very many. So that whole that's going to change big time. So the environment's different. So I'm going to probably be doing more things like what we're doing right now. The Zoom meeting. So we're going to have to see how that works out and what happens in the future of people gathering together.
Right. That's awesome. I know my dad's a public speaker as well, so he's kind of working on this remote public speaking and everything as well. So moving back to your baseball career, I know that your signature pitch was the screwball, and I talked to Coach Matthews here, and he told me you actually learned it while you were at Eckerd. So can you tell me kind of how you, why you decided to learn that pitch, and maybe you were told by the coaching staff here, and then why it just became so successful in your career?
Okay, well, this is a longer story, but I'll try to shorten it. The reason why I had to learn that pitch is because I was born with a club foot. So I had my foot reconstructed as a kid, and My right leg's about half the size of my left. My shoe sizes are 2 sizes different. I have a fused ankle and I can't push off the mound as much as everybody else. So my mechanics were unconventional and I really couldn't fix them to throw what you would say, normal.
Mhm.
So I had to throw a certain way and I couldn't throw the curveball, the slider, other pitches very well. They were okay. And once I got to college, I finally realized, what I had wasn't enough. I was going to have to learn more. So I tried all those pitches and they didn't work. And then one day I saw my pitching coach, Rich Folkers. So he's a former major leaguer too. He was a coach in those late 80s, early 90s.
Mhm.
And he was teaching a left-handed pitcher, Shane Berry, how to throw a screwball. And I watched and I just thought, this doesn't have to be just for left-handers. It's something I could try because I'm running out of options.
Right.
And I kind of started throwing it behind his back until he caught me and he said, all right, let's work on this and see where it goes. And over those 3 years, it became my signature pitch, and it just continued to develop and help me get to the big leagues.
Well, that's awesome. And so talking about your kind of big league career, I think you played for the Oakland A's, and so you were actually part of the team that won the 20-game win streak. So I just want to know, like, what was it like, one, to break that record, but then just the atmosphere and the culture of that team, and what it was like kind of being part of that organization at that point.
Well, the funny thing was is for the players, it wasn't as important until we got much further along, right? Because our goal was just to make the playoffs, win a division or get a wild card spot. So I don't think we really took it serious until it got to, 15 or so. And, the media started coming out and going crazy. And then, it was unbelievable fun, but then it put more pressure because, it would be great to break the record, but you just want to get to the playoffs and win a World Series.
Right.
So the game that we tied was just an unbelievable situation where Scott Hatteberg hit a home run in extra innings to win it. I think that was the game that we were up by an unbelievable amount, and we almost lost it. And then to be part of that team, and it's just incredible how many. I think I've only done that one other time, and that was with my high school team where, that could happen. You have a very talented team, and you could win that many in a row. But to do it at the major league level was unbelievable. I think even one other time during that season, we went on a 16-1 streak. So that team was pretty special. Just, once you get to the playoffs, it's a different animal and you never know what's going to happen. And we just couldn't get the job done.
That's awesome. And so I know through watching, I've watched Moneyball, of course, and you see that the data analysis was such a huge part in that. Can you kind of talk about that and like your thoughts on it and how much it played into your game at all?
I am in the middle of that whole Moneyball thing.
Okay.
If I'm honest, I think should have been called the Hudson, Mulder, and Zito ball because they were three great starters, and if you have that, I mean, you can overcome a lot. I did enjoy the on-base percentage, the taking pitches and being patient and trying to make that pitcher work because I know for me, I always had a lot easier time against aggressive hitters.
Right.
So to do that, to be selective and take your pitches, I totally agree with that. I just did not agree with the no bunting, stealing, and hit and run.
Okay.
I know that during the season that can work because you're facing lesser teams and not, you're facing their fourth and fifth starter, so they're not as good. But once the playoffs came and you're facing the best teams with their 1, 2, and 3 starters, I think you have to play a little bit of small ball, move the runners over. And, when we're facing Clemens and Pettit and guys like that, it makes it a lot harder if you're not doing the small things right. So, and at that time, we were one of the few teams doing it, right? So now everybody's doing it. So I don't know how it's working because no one's doing really the conventional way. Everybody's doing the same way where, they're taking pitches and trying to hit home runs and no one, not a lot of stealing, bunting, and hit and run. So I don't know how that would work if you took a team from the past and put them now. I'd like to see how that would work out.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. And so moving on with your career, you then came to the Rays for 3 years. So what was it like, coming back to the Tampa Bay area, where you played your college ball and then being, right down the street playing for the Rays?
That was, and people get mad, that's the best team I played for. I played for the Yankees, and they were my team growing up. I played for the A's. We went to the playoffs and Moneyball, all that. But the Rays were where I really got my chance because I was playing for the Yankees. I was up and down 6 or 7 times. They traded me to the Red Sox. The Red Sox didn't protect me, and then the Rays picked me up in the expansion draft. And right from spring training, they said, "You got a job, go out there and do it." And I felt like I had less pressure. There was more psychological safety, and it allowed me to do different things and improve. So I went out there and tried all new things, and I improved more on that month and a half in spring training than I did in my last 6 years, and I never went back to the minor leagues. Also love the fact that spring training and the regular season were in the same spot, less travel,
Yeah.
and I knew the area. You know, being at Eckerd, I knew the whole area, so and I loved being down there. So to me, it was tough when I was traded in 2000. The only reason why it wasn't that tough is because we weren't winning. So if at that time we were winning in Tampa, I would have been very aggravated I got traded, but it was the best move for me looking into the future.
Oh, that's awesome. So moving back to your time as a student athlete at Eckerd, what would you say is your favorite memory?
Oh, I thought about one. That one's tough. I think it's just any time on the field with the guys. Being a student athlete was tough. There wasn't a lot of time to yourself to do things you want to do. You know, you'd get up, go to your classes. I always had to have, you know, morning classes or early afternoon. Then you eat, you get to the field, and when you're done, you eat again, and then you're studying. So a big portion of my time at Eckerd was spent on that baseball field and developing relationships with those guys, and you know, doing the thing that I had passion for. So it was any time that I was on that field.
Yeah, definitely. And what would you say is your favorite thing about Eckerd as a whole?
I liked Eckerd because it was like a community.
Yeah.
You know, I liked it was that small community where, you know, I knew what was going on. You know, I visited schools like Miami, Clemson, all those schools, and I just didn't feel anything towards it. You know, it was just like a hustle and bustle of a city. You know, like I said before, as a student athlete, you don't have a lot of time. So I kind of enjoyed that I was able to see the same people all the time and, you know, have that comfort feeling. It was just a great atmosphere to be at Eckerd. You know, everything, the classes were close. Everything was right at hand for you. So I really like that about Eckerd.
Yes, I can completely agree. We're one big community, one big family here. And so my final question, you know, you've had tremendous success in your career, both professional and now with your speaking. So what advice would you give to our current student athletes?
I think is what I talked about before. You're always going to practice, you know, athletes are always going to practice their physical part of the game. And, you know, they try to work on a mental part of the game, knowing the game. You know, in academics, they're always going to study and try harder. But I think a lot of times they miss that emotional part, you know, where your brain is all of a sudden telling you, you know, you're going to fail, or there's negative voices in your head. And if you don't acknowledge those, they put you on what, you know, even in academics, I'd call a streak, right? If you're not thinking the right way, it affects how you play. Because I know on the mound, if I was thinking that there's a possibility of failure, or if I'm thinking about the past and what I did wrong, and then thinking about the future and the consequences of if I fail right now, I'm not going to play as good because I'm not going to attack the strike zone. I'm going to aim the ball and all those things. But we don't pay attention to those enough. So if everybody could actually go out and think about what their emotions are every day, if you wake up and just think, okay, I'm struggling today, at least you could acknowledge it and know it. Because the whole point is when you're facing that adversity, you just need to be able to shut that voice out and trust in your own skills. And I know for me, that's when I've always been my most successful. And you're not going to succeed every time, but there's definitely more of a consistency to it if you can shut that negative voice out.
Right, completely agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jim. And if our fans at home want to stay up to date with Jim, you can check out his website at improvtalk.com or jimmecir.com. That's JIMMECIR.com. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Alumni Triton Talk.